lend a hand with data analysis and metrics.
Yeah, I mean, especially in small companies, just look at the org chart, right? Like you got a sales leader, you got some reps, you might have sales engineers in my world of software just to make sure you can tag team the demo effectively. And then if it's a 20 or $30 million business, you might have one RevOps person.
Half a RevOps person.
Yeah, you might have, is it the top half or the bottom half? I'm not really sure, but there's just not as much dedicated analytical muscle in most sales organizations for smaller businesses as there is on the finance side. A lot of great businesses out there were started with this idea of like, how can we use our excess capacity for good, right? Like you can argue all you want about Uber and how they got to where they are, but like the insight behind Uber is there's a bunch of excess capacity in the transportation and logistics world. Like, how do we harness that and make it available on demand? And I think CFOs can think about where the excess capacity is in their organization, even though everyone's really busy. Somebody probably has a couple hours somewhere. And just like you talked at the beginning of this episode about, the inputs and the outputs and thinking about your return on capital, it's like, what can you get for that return on excess capacity for your really smart analytical people in the organization? I would argue one of the highest returns on that excess capacity is pointing those people towards the part of the organization that's going to help you get and keep customers and figure out how they can be helpful. And so whether it's forecasting or segmentation or going back to the CRM and figuring out where there's pipeline to reheat, it's a good thing to look for. And I also think you can pay your team a compliment and give them development opportunities that they might not have had if you hadn't thought this creatively of, you're doing a really good job with the budgeting, the FP&A, the reporting package for our investors. Do you want to get involved operationally in other parts of the company that can help round out your skill set? Your really high performing people will say yes to that. And then it's about having a conversation with the sales leader to say, where can this be most helpful to you without taking the responsibility away from them?
Something that I find is key too is just walking the sales leader through which metrics are important and then going a step deeper to say why it's important to the greater P&L. And so an example of this is I would drone on and on about net dollar retention in the quarterly meetings, right? And I remember like maybe 2 quarters in, I was meeting with the SVP of sales and he asked a question about the number and why it had moved up or down. And I paused and I was like, you know what? I'm going to walk him through all 4 of the levers that go into this. And we had like a 60-minute conversation about each of those. And I noticed the next time I brought it up at a meeting, his eyes lit up and he said something around one of those levers. So he had internalized what I had said and why it was important to the business. And he had linked it back to how we were hiring certain people in customer success versus system engineers and how it impacted the P&L. So we took this metric that he could cite like what the result was. This was my fault, not his. No one had taken the time to explain what went into that and then why it mattered for the rest of the org.
We talked about make the budget mean something. I think it's make the metrics mean something too. Like, why should we get excited when our net retention goes up? Or why should we get excited when churn goes down or when our ASP or sales cycle moves in the right direction? Like, what impact does that have on the P&L? Another way to frame it is like, what impact is that going to have on an eventual exit? Every investor-backed business out there is always thinking about exit readiness, but it's this really abstract pop quiz in most people's minds. Like, yeah, I know we're going to have to sell the business someday. I know the investor is going to ask us for a bunch of data, but when you can frame that in the right way of here's what's going to matter for the exit, here's how we can prove that we've made the business better and that there's more juice to squeeze in a hold period after that, that can reframe things and be a huge motivator, especially for go-to-market teams that are really stuck in this, like, I got to make the quarter rhythm. And again, as a finance leader who has the gift and the curse of access to all the numbers and the P&L and all that, and is often the CEO's right hand, educating the rest of the leadership team, framing why it matters to the P&L and why it matters to an eventual sale for the business is a huge opportunity, not just because you can deputize the rest of the leadership team to help you in that. It can be really motivating to think, hey, in 2 years, we have to find a way to take NRR from 105 to 110. When you do that, what you discover is there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. And then the strategy becomes about picking a couple of those ways and putting your shoulder behind them.
One more thing about SpendHound. Teams using SpendHound reduce software spend by up to 30%. Here's how that actually happens. First, you get the data. Real pricing benchmarks from over 1,000 companies across 10,000 SaaS and AI vendors. When a renewal comes up, you know what fair pricing is and what you should be pushing for. But knowing the number and getting the number are two different things. SpendHound also includes on-demand procurement specialists who help with negotiation strategy, contract review, and renewal emails. You stop overpaying for the tools you need. You cut redundant tools before they renew. And you negotiate from a position of strength now that you have both the market data and expert support behind you. SpendHound is built by the team behind Yipit Data. It's rated #1 on G2 in SaaS spend management. And did we mention it's free forever for SMB? When we say free, we actually mean it. You can keep all the savings. Plus, it's only $10,000 per year for enterprise with $150,000 in savings guaranteed. There's a reason we're growing more than 100% year over year. Do you want to stop overspending on SaaS? Then go to spendhound.com/CJ. Zero risk, guaranteed savings. That's spendhound.com/CJ.